Howdy folks, I'm Hank Sheffer, and welcome to another true life story right here with Jack San Felice on Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
In 1905 and 1906, a fellow by the name of Pete Carney came to Arizona, and he decided that he was going to look for copper. You see, electricity was just come into fashion among houses all over the West, the East Coast, etc. So there was a demand now for copper. He thought if he could find this mother lode of copper in Arizona, where there were already a lot of copper mines, that he could be rich beyond compare, like those who were the first to find the mother lode in Nevada or in California, the 49ers. The first guys get there usually get the best claims. Well, he filed several claims in and around east side of Superstition Mountain proper, next to Peralta Road. And in that particular area, he formed a camp. And so he found this camp right next to a spring, and it was called Carney Spring. That's what it was named. And they put a pipe in the ground and ran it out, and they built a little structure for it where the pipe would go through and the water would drop down so you could get in your buckets or whatever. In fact, when I first came to Arizona in the early 90s, that pipe was still coming out of the mountain into the cement device. You could drink the water out of it. It was good water because it wasn't contaminated by the bacteria that would be left by animals. But later, someone, of course, tore the thing down, destroyed it. Well, it called that Carney Springs. And right next to Carney Springs, they had a camp. And they set up a camp, and they had 24 men working on this particular site. Now, this site had upper and lower mines, and it was going to take some heavy-duty equipment and some funds. So Carney goes back east looking for a prospector, looking for money men, and he finds a guy named Ogden Bowers. And so they called the camp, and he financed the one dig site. And so they called the camp Bowers. And they started work, and they brought in the power drills and started working on that rock, because that's what it was. It was the side of the mountain, which was solid rock. So they dug a lower tunnel, and then they dug some other drifts up top, and then tried to cross-cut the tunnel coming across. They were able to at one location, but just barely. But that mine in solid rock, it went 600 feet into the base of that mountain in solid rock. So all they did was drill and blast and muck. Drill, blast, and muck. You had to take out the rock. And it was actually, when I found it in the 1990s, it was still open, and it was all solid rock, and it was done so that it was safe, so nothing was going to fall down on you from the top. Wasn't a flat roof. It was like concave a little bit, and you could go back. I took a fella in there that was 6'9". He had to stoop a little bit, but he walked the whole way in, and that was early on in the 1990s. Well, Carney had trouble with Bowers, because Bowers expected a return on his money right away. So he withdrew from it. So Carney said, well, if you did that, the heck with you, I'm going to change the name to Camp Carney. We did away with the name Bowers, so it was called Camp Carney. And he looked around in Mesa and Phoenix, and he found some other people to finance him. Now, about this time, copper mining was really taken off in the West. You see, after in 1893, when the gold became the standard, and silver lost its value tremendously, went from $1.40 an ounce to about 20 cents an ounce. Could not make any money on silver, so all the mines in the West shut down. A lot of the mines, there were copper. In fact, the Silver King mine found copper in its values, and it was high-grade, some high-grade copper. And the Silver Queen, right down a half a mile from it, they found very high-grade copper. After 200 feet down, and they didn't mine anymore. And it was taken over. That Silver Queen mine became the very famous magma mine. These guys are still working. They're still bringing money in. And they got there's a new kind of drill that came out called the diamond hex drill. And they were using that new drill with diesel-powered power drills. They weren't the hand drill that they were of the 1870s. This was a power drill. It was operated by diesel fluid and operate the engine, and then the hoses going to it, and then it would just bam, 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 bam. And it turned as it was going, bam, 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 bam. And guys would stand behind it. It looked like a machine gun is what it did on an aircraft carrier. And it made that terrible noise. And so they'd drill so much, then they'd blast, they'd insert the dynamite and blast. And then they would pull all that rock out. And at the base of that mine, from going back to 600 feet and to the right, it's all rubble now, and it's all outside. Some of it was hauled away. Carney, in fact, he built a road. And in the early days, these early Ford trucks had a gear in them that you didn't need four-wheel drive. That thing would go just about anywhere. And so they had these old-fashioned trucks, weren't old-fashioned then, they were brand new, and they would haul this ore that they was going to, he thought that the vein was in, and they would take that down and have it processed and try to get some money out of it. Now, what they saw when they first started looking there was green rock, and they, in the upper mines, had a lot of green rock in it. Now, that was in 1906 when they really started. In 1906 and 1907, there were several stories in the newspapers, the local papers, about Carney and his mines. And they talked about how well it was going, and mining people from the Ray Mine area and from down around San Manuel, which were big copper mines, they talked about what a good mine that this was going to be. So it was encouraging, and so Carney didn't want to give up. Also, there was an old fella by the name of Ed Cave, and his nickname was Old Rackensack. And he had come back to Arizona and traveled 1,000 miles to see his old diggings. So he had diggings here in Arizona. And when he gets into the Phoenix area, he gives an interview, and he talks about emerald gold. And what do you mean emerald gold? Well, the gold is in a green rock. And so that's what they thought that they were going to find. As a matter of fact, up at the dacite mines, you'll find a lot of the green rock. And this actually comes from the dacite mines, or the Carney mines, as they were also called. Dacite was a type of rock, and it's a volcanic type of rock that was found up in the area of that part of the Superstition Mountains. So they're still they're digging away. Now the paper comes in, and they're talking about emerald gold, and it's found in green. And as a matter of fact, at the Silver King mine, which I've been part of for 20 years, a lot of the ore up there had green in it, which is chrysocolla. Chrysocolla is a very greenish type rock, and that's what you see right here, chrysocolla. And that's a sign of copper. But also in the copper in Arizona, Almost every mine that has copper has some gold values in it. Now, Carney's starting to find gold. And the newspaper is talking about, like this was the 49ers strike. Camp Bowers finds gold. Carney Mines finds gold. Rich find. And that's exactly what they talk about. A very rich find at the Carney Mine. So now that draws more money into it, people that would invest, but it also draws other people to the area, prospectors, claim jumpers. And sure enough, Carney was involved in a suit. Somebody filed suit against him. Said that one of his claims, that was his claim in 1875. So he, of course, it's been expired for 40 years, but it doesn't make a difference. That he still wants to file suit on it. Well, in any event, that thing was settled in a hurry. So Carney is digging away, and now he's got the upper mines, and that's where he finds a lot of green. And so they're trying to dig in these upper mines and come back down, because it's about 150 feet from the upper mines to the lower mines. And they dug several tunnels up there, and then they drifted down, and then they dug some shafts. And the more they progressed, the more prospectors come in, interlopers and vagabonds, rogues, and that's where the term rogue and vagabond really applies. And they would set up their camps. Now, in the later days of the Carney Mines, in 1914, they had hired this guy named Eli Korovich to be the mine foreman. Now look, they're working the mines from 1906 to 1914. That is a long time to work a mine without having a bonanza find in it, or find a big load of copper, or find a real strike. But they're finding enough just to get by on, is what they were doing. Well, another group comes in, and they were having some problems. This other group was shooting at their camp. And the mine foreman, the new mine foreman, Eli Korovich, so he gets his rifle, and he gets 3 shells, and he loads one of the shells, and he said he's going to go over and talk to those guys, get them to stop shooting at the camp. Well, he doesn't come back that night. In the morning, they put a search party out, and they come across Eli Korovich's body. He had been shot through the head, I believe through the head, at least once, and he was dead. His rifle was there and 1 expended shell in it, and they couldn't find the other 2 shells. So we don't know if he fought more, he actually shot more than once. Now, the sheriff comes in and starts, in those days, this is the way it worked. The sheriff comes in, and they grab everybody within the vicinity, and everybody is a likely suspect. And sometimes they just grab everybody, and they grab them more than once, and they bring them in to talk to them. And that was a method of operation called like a dragnet. A sweep of the area, everybody's around, we just want to lock them up until we sort out that who's the suspect. Well, they developed 3 guys that were suspects. One of them was named Bert Winiger. He was a mining man, and he was well known in the area. But soon as they found out Bert Winiger was grabbed up, they got an attorney, and they convened a coroner's inquiry. A coroner's jury is put together, and that's the way they did it in those days. They pulled in a coroner's jury. It's still written in the laws and the old common laws of back east, coroner's juries. And then they decided there were 6 people in this jury, and that's normal. And they have a hearing, and so after the hearing, they dismissed any charges against the 3 men, including Bert Winiger, that they had gone. And after that, the Carney Mines sort of faded into obscurity, but the mines are still there. And I was teaching at the community colleges, and I was also lecturing around the area, I used to like to take them back in because it was a safe mine. It was all hard rock. It wasn't a chance in the world it was going to collapse on you. And so we're going back, and we get back there and go back 600 feet. I tell them what you got to look for and bring lights, of all things, boots. Because the first time I went in, there was two rattlesnakes right inside the entrance. And that's, of course, where rattlesnakes like to go. We start to go back into Bat Cave, and one of the guys in front hears this noise. Brrr, brrr. You hear that rattle, and oh, shoot. We can't find a rattlesnake. We couldn't see him. There was no way in the world. Well, it was a black rattlesnake is what it was. And you couldn't see that son of a gun. He was dark. I didn't kill the black rattlesnake because they're so rare. We did find him, and we got him and we took him out. We carried him out, actually. So we got rid of the snakes and we went back. But when I started taking people back there, we go back 600 feet, dogleg, and there's bats. Now there's a few bats, and I'm saying 20 to 30 bats back there. And as time progressed, and a few years later, I go back again. I'm taking another group back, and you dogleg again. You go back, and almost at the end of the tunnel, you start seeing bats, but not 20 or 30. There's 200 to 300 bats. But the one thing you can't do is make loud noises. You can't holler. You can't drop stuff. You can't bang against the walls. You can't bring canteens that are metal that bang. So you got to be quiet so you can observe them. And it's kind of really neat to see them. It's like looking at a beehive for the first time, and you see all of these little bees. Bzz. Well, that's what the bats are. They're all just kind of like just hanging out. And that's what they do. They hang from their feet. So they were hanging out. So I'm bringing this guy named Jake. Jake's with our group. I'd say, Jake, whatever you do, don't say anything. Keep quiet. You don't want to disturb the bats. You want to be able to see the bats and photograph and not disturb them and don't get a chance. We get back there, no problem, 600 feet. We get back there, we go another 100 feet, and I put the light on, and we're getting closer, 40 feet away from the bats, about 40 or 50 feet. All of a sudden, Jake goes, God almighty, look at all those bats! Guess what happens? 200 or 300 bats come out of it. Because what the bats going to do? They're going out the escape hole, which is right by us. So everybody's got to hit the floor. Brrr. One guy had a hat on. It knocked his hat off. And he is petrified, okay? Petrified. And the bats. On another occasion, we're going up to the upper day site because we want to gather some green rock. As you're going up the mountain, and you start out on a semi-incline, and then as you're going up, you go up, but you got to have a landmark because all the rocks look alike. And right there, on the way up, not too far from the day site, is a large rock formation. It looks like a teepee. And so I always called it Teepee Rock. But when you get to that rock, if you make a dogleg right, you come to a small cave. And in that small cave, I guess it's about 60 feet long and about 20 feet deep. It's really neat. It was an old site there. That was a real cave. It wasn't mine. And in the floor, there are Indian grind holes. And they're about 8 inches wide, and they're about 6 to 8 inches deep. So some ancient Indians had lived there at one time. And we know, of course, there being more water, that they did live in that area. But when you get inside and you look out, you get to the back, it looks just like a teapot. So you see, and I always called that Teapot Cave. Now, it's an ancient cave, been there for hundreds of years, but most people that's gone up there for years will walk right by it. Because as you're going up, you're focused on up, and you're not looking for things all around. Now, in the cave at the back of the cave, there's a small niche about this thing. And I shined my flashlight. I thought I saw something move. And sure enough, it was a desert tortoise. He's about that long, and as soon as the light hit him, his old head popped right back in. He would not poke his head out. I didn't want to disturb him. You shouldn't disturb those critters. They're rare to see. And so with that done, we resume our hike up to the top. Now, as you're going, the elevation, of course, it's not going this, it's going like this now. And it gets steeper and steeper and steeper. And just before you get to the top, there's a soft area there. It's dirt. Where it come from over the years, who knows? But it's a little tricky spot. You can trip and fall there before you get right onto the little plateau that's there. And when you get to the plateau, you start looking over to the left and you see a mine. Well, guess what? That's not the only opening. You go a little further around the bend, there's another one, and it's in solid rock. And then you go over down. Now you're on top of the one particular dacite mine. It's a level area, but it goes and it drops off. And when you drop off, there's some more mines to the left, some more, and all of this work had been done. But what did they do with the ore? Well, when we go back over to the end of that plateau, there's a drop off. And it's gradual, and it goes, and that whole little canyon is filled with dacite rock, with green rock, and it's greenish blue also. Some is, and that bluish color, of course, is azurite. Azurite, chrysocolla, and malachite. That's the formation of copper, silver, and then you find gold in most places in the copper. So that whole ravine is full of it. Now, if you're real adventurous, you can look in the mines and you can take a rope in there, because once you go in, the one that's really good to see, you go in and it goes down. It's a shaft. It becomes a shaft. And it's a deep shaft. So if you wanna get down to the bottom of that shaft, you gotta have a long rope. And I don't recommend anybody do that. The last time I was there, we decided that we're gonna not go down the same way we came up. We're going down the rubble. And now you're going a long way on the rubble down this canyon. And it slip and slide and fall and slip and slide and fall. And you got just to be careful when you get to the bottom. Seems like you're never going to get out of the rubble. So there was a whole lot of material taken out of those Carney mines back in the early 1900s, during the time when copper was sought for in Arizona and in the West. So that's basically my story of the Carney mines, except Corvich's crime was never solved. And this was 1914. And that era and beyond, there were a lot of unsolved deaths or murders in the Superstition Mountains. And Eli Corvich's story and his death is another one of those unsolved mysteries of the Superstition Mountain.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.